All right, good evening. Today we're coming back to our series on reinforcement learning in Pokemon. We are continuing to adjust the penalties that we are putting in for it. I had been putting in this stuck penalty for every time the basically it would end up between this grace period and the window. What this ended up causing to have happen more frequently is that um, once it got to the high end here, it would basically stop moving to try and manipulate the novelty reward. So we put this minimum here where it's either going to be the difference between the last time it had explored a new step and the window, or um, or sorry, the current step minus the last time it had seen a new space, or this window. Um, so that way the game would interpret and describe it. To stop the game from manipulating, maximizing the novelty reward, because the novelty reward is just being added on to the um, the overall exploration reward, and I want to actually take that out and do it where it's kind of this trade-off between novelty and getting stuck. To have that be, um, I guess, decoupled a little bit from one another, because I think what was happening is the AI would realize that some spaces are worth more than others incidentally by doing this. And then it was trying to really focus on increasing that exploration score, mostly for the novelty reward, even if it took stuck penalties. And then by doing this, it had kind of stagnated. And so I want to change the way that these two are incorporated with one another. So we have here this stuck penalty, and then I want to add in this novelty reward here. So this way, we still get an idea on how the game is progressing in terms of this exploration here. And then this stuck versus basically this is the trade-off between getting stuck in a spot versus finding a new location, right? And so if we come back to where is that here, if it's basically it will accrue, what will this be, almost like 450, so it becomes like 40 points if it stands still to try and manipulate that window reward here, where because the novelty will never be larger than that offset, right? So right now we have if the regular rewards are 1x, the exploration I think was 0.01, so about 100 times. It needs to visit 100 new spaces to get 1 point there, and then times the stuck penalty. So if there are 450 steps before moving, that means that it accrues about 0.45 in terms of negative stuck penalty rewards. And then the most that it could offset here would be, let's say, 500 times this 1/10,000th. So not really doing much to offset one another. And there could be some tweaking that could be done with this, but I want to keep the novelty reward almost like a progression throughout the game. So every time it's finding a new step, even if this is um, 1/10,000th of a point, it's still something and encouraging it to keep moving and going and eventually finding new places along the way. So it doesn't necessarily count or care about the last time it had been to a previous location, but more about just finding a new location overall. So in the early game, if it's moving through, it would accrue slightly more reward than before, but keeping it in mind that it is working through. And if we come back up here, you can see all the things that we're rewarding it for. So there are events that are stored in the game's memories. These are things like trainer battles, uh, gym battles, finding certain TMs, getting the HMs, getting certain items like the key items in the game. But those are all here as part of the rewards. So things like getting the town map, for example, is worth something. Here we have it to start gaining levels. Now this starts from, this is offset by the initial level of the starter Pokemon, which in this case is level 6 because it's done the first rival battle. So its starter has leveled up at least once. So we're offsetting that to set it to 0. I reduced the reward last time. This was due to, with Bulbasaur, it was learning to use Leech Seed as a way to effectively farm the heal reward while not necessarily progressing in the game. And then I want this in here so that way we reward it for going to the Pokemon Center. That's there for 2 reasons. One, to keep the battles hopefully going more smoothly, so it has the abilities ready and available, and also to prevent it from warping all the way back essentially to the beginning of the game whenever it blacks out. What had ended up happening here with this reward is that it would know that Leech Seed would help it to um, Leech Seed would help it to gain score here, but it hurts it over in the overall progression because it learns to do Leech Seed a couple times at the beginning and then do Growl a number of times to weaken the damage that it's taking. And then because this is percentage-based healing, what was happening is that um, at the beginning of the game, there's like 30 health on the Pokemon. It takes 2 damage, so now it's lost 1/15 of its health. So it's gaining like 5 or 6%, and then um, essentially it would do that every turn in battle, where it would just growl. That way, it's not doing damage to the Pokemon. Eventually, it would do tackle a couple times to knock it out, or it would just run away. So it learned to not successfully complete battles. It learned to kind of manipulate the healing here. So there's and last time when I had removed it, it had stopped using the Pokemon Center altogether, which isn't what I wanted. So I'm keeping this in here, but just basically at the bare bones minimum of every percentage point healed will be the reward obtained. We still have this die count in here. It's almost unavoidable for the AI as it progresses through the game, just because of the nature of how it learns. So we do want to teach it that dying is bad, but not necessarily catastrophic. Uh, the issue here is when it dies, but then it stops getting the exploration reward because it goes back to an area that it's been too many times and it's too far away from, let's say if it was, it made it to Brock's gym and then it got sent all the way back to Pallet Town. It tends to then get stuck and sit in the corners of Pallet Town going, well, I'm not getting anything recently from exploration rewards, so I'm not going to really do that. The leveling here helps to offset that a little bit by hopefully allowing it to get a few levels. Sometimes what it does is it will take one of the other Pokemon from the beginning of the game, like a Pidgey or Rattata, level those up a few times to start getting some reward there, and then hopefully offsets how far back it had gotten set. So the Pokemon centers are huge. A huge thing in terms of it going back throughout the game. So I'm wondering, we may have to potentially even figure out the locations of the Pokemon centers in terms of our map here. Okay, we do have them. That if these are actually going to be visited, giving a boosted reward to them. So that way it learns the, I guess, proper, how to say it, the proper behaviors here in going to the Pokemon centers and getting the rewards. I don't want to do that just yet, but it's something that I've been kicking around with making these changes. So that way, it hopefully will then learn some of the, uh, I guess, correct ways to behave as it goes through the game. I pulled out the Pokemon names here. There was also another thing about potentially giving it additional reward for hitting with things like super effective moves. So, this would have to be built out more to not just be what the memory IDs are here, memory numbers here, but working its way up to actually um, putting in all the move types and stuff to teach it the right thing, because it had not learned that Vine Whip is good against Brock. in terms of using Bulbasaur as a starter. So then what ended up happening is it would go to Brock. It would like do tackle all the way through. It would get through uh, Geodude with an Ivysaur and then get knocked out by usually the first time Bide goes off because it stores up 2 and then deals double back. So it would tackle, and then get hit for 10 to 15 damage back at least. That's usually about how much health it had to knock it out. So there is hope here, or encouraging it to learn some of the better behaviors and potentially having to put in more rewards for it along the way. So I don't necessarily want to add too much here to it, just because I think it creates a lot of overhead here. The idea here behind the menu reward is to reward it the first time it goes into the menu and then stop doing so after that. So that way it learns to not go into the menus as frequently, just to kind of poke around. And then this has worked generally well in reducing kind of the waste time in terms of exploration, where a lot of times it will just sit there kind of bouncing through the menus and not necessarily gaining any reward during those times. But if it happens to not be getting any exploration, it tends to go back to going through the menus because it can't really figure out what to do and it's guessing randomly. This here is the captured Pokemon. This is based off of the Pokedex. We're giving ×3 rewards here. So at the beginning of the game, it will start at 3 because of the starter Pokemon, and the first Pokemon it captures will then go to 6. And this then continues to increase even when Pokemon evolve, because it's based off the Pokedex, not the Pokemon caught themselves. And then same thing here for the scene reward. The item reward here was an idea to reward it for having items in the inventory. Don't the idea here was encouraging it to hopefully go to the store or Pokemart and buy items, but it hasn't learned that behavior yet. There was one time where it had figured out. When I first implemented giving it infinite money, basically every single step it would check if it had gone below 10,000 and then buy more. Unfortunately, what would end up happening is it would buy multiple stacks of potions for Pokeballs and then essentially cause the game to glitch out. And so it wasn't making progression because it had basically had a not possible inventory as far as the memory goes, where it's like you weren't supposed to be able to have multiple stacks of the same item, and then the game doesn't know what to do at that point. So it basically locks the character into place, and they can't move around anymore. So I put it in that every 50 steps it goes and updates to give the agent 10,000 more. So there's way less chance of that happening throughout the game, because you do have to complete the purchase. Then it basically, the only time that would happen is about a 2% chance that it would randomly pop up more and then go through and buy more of the items. So that had counteracted that, but I still like giving it the money that it needs. It's going to need it later on. Unfortunately, with it blacking out so many times and losing a fair amount of its money just through the game itself, it had never really learned to capture additional Pokemon. And I think there are cases where that is actually helpful. If we're not using Bulbasaur as a starter, it needs to capture either a Weedle or a Paris. The Weedle from Viridian Forest needs to evolve into Beedrill to learn Cut, and then Paris can learn that, but that's caught in Mount Moon, and it's kind of a rare encounter. So wanting it to kind of learn those behaviors earlier in the game, but doing Bulbasaur as a starter helps to avoid some of the issues with Cut when we get to that point in the overall progression. So what we're going to do here, we're going to make a couple of these changes. It still hadn't figured out the badges. Sometimes I wonder if we should just go back to using Squirtle as a starter. Like I said, then we have that trade-off of actually capturing Pokemon, because Squirtle's third move that it learns overall is, there's a tackle, growl, and then it learns bubble beam, or bubble, sorry, which is very good against Brock, and it tends to use those moves more in the encounters. So it got through Brock incredibly easy, and then where it was stumbling was Mount Moon. And then I had changed to using Bulbasaur to try and see if it was better. So maybe let's just do that as well. Let's just change it back to using Bulbasaur as a starter. Where do we got here? It's here. Yeah, Bulbasaur dot state is not what we want, right? We want as Pokedex involves. So this one starts with Squirtle, and then hopefully can progress through. So we'll kick off going through that way. I'll have about 20 agents running. I had been having memory issues recently as well with the laptop where it wasn't, it would complete one cycle of about 200,000 steps. And when it got to the second completion of steps, it would give me an error that we are running out of, or not enough space to allocate when it does the actual learning updates here. So how this works is it does small batch updates every 500, or in this case, I have it as about 1,000 steps now. But then when it gets to the end, it does the full learning process. And it needs space to be able to allocate for the 20 agents here in terms of the number of CPU, all the steps that it has along the way built up. So 1024 by 200 by 20, and then by the, I only have one epoch here, but then working through those, I believe there are about 8 steps in the training model. That is what causes it to um, run out of memory. It needs to allocate more than I have available at the time. So before this started, I restarted my computer to hopefully free up any resources that were stuck opening. It makes me think that there is in here somewhere some type of a memory leak where it's not properly dumping everything afterwards. So we can't continue the learning process. The hope here is that when I kick this off, we can get to a stage where it's running before I'd been getting about 20 to 30 million, 25 to 30 million steps a day of progress. And then, in a day, I can see progress in terms of, did it make it back to Brock? Did it get to, Mount Moon? And then that had always been the hope, but we just hadn't been having really any success with that. So the hope is that with going back, we're going back to Bulbasaur, going back to Squirtle as a starter. And then we're going to be starting the learning process from scratch, 20 agents, and then as far as the rewards go here, 5 times for each of the events. These are things that happen along the way, like the trainer battles. So hopefully it learns to progress through the game this way. The small leveling reward, very little healing. This actually, with going back to Squirtle as a starter, should encourage it to not take advantage of the leech seed farming because it won't be possible. The died count here will continue to be the number of times that it dies over the course of its run. The number of badges times 100 could just be a total of 800 over the course of the game, but really get it in the mindset that running and getting that badge is very important. So, progressing to those, you're going to encounter all these battles along the way. You're going to get the levels. Assuming you go to the Pokemon centers, you'll get the healing rewards. And then you'll continue exploring as well all the way along the way. And then that should minimize this stuck penalty, but also give it rewards for finding new spaces. And these now all kind of bridge together nicely with one another instead of them being at odds with one another. So that is my hope for this. What I will do is I'm going to, I guess I can talk through how to actually kick this off. So if you've been following along and you install this yourself, I'm on Windows, so you need to do command prompt to come to here. You're going to get it all set up. Let me bring this over the screen. Now I brought everything into here, and then this is where I created my Python environment. So I need to activate it by essentially navigating in Windows to the activate file here. When I do that, you'll see it's now activated the Poké Red environment. If you are on Linux, you have to do source and then provide it the file location, which is going to be slightly different. It's going to be the name of your virtual environment /bin/activate would get you there. And that should then activate your environment. And then you need to make sure you're in the baselines folder when you're going to be kicking it off. And then to execute it, you're going to go Python. I'm using baseline fast v2, as you can see right here. I'm going to save the changes that I made just to be sure that they're here. And then you're going to kick it off. And it's going to take a little bit. So my stream may start stuttering when this process is kicking off of generating all the virtual environments. Now here I have it set to true, which means that it's not going to show me the actual agents running. What it's going to be doing is essentially loading them in the background with no head. That's why headless is true. And if you wanted to see these, I have notes here, just set it to false. And then make sure you take the number of CPUs down to, I'd say at most, the number of cores that you have going on your computer. I have an older laptop here that does have an old GPU in it, but it is only able to run 4 of them simultaneously with headless false. So the ones that you're actually seeing in terms of the environment. If I don't set it to, if I don't uh, have them displaying, then I can get about 20 or 24 usually. I had been struggling first. I may have to take that down to 16. Okay, so hopefully this is back. It's still telling me that it's unstable, but at least hopefully you can see now that the process is kicking off. You're going to get one of these for each of the windows that it's going. I do have it set to use a CUDA device, which means you have a GPU and you have the proper Python package for that. This here is how it's actually going through the feature extraction for the model, and then we are off and running. So you'll see it will generate a line for each of the agents that are running. Unfortunately, I can't make it wide enough to not have this kind of weirdly display everything. You can see here it's trying to stretch and make it work, but essentially what you end up is it looks like this. So it's going to generate a line for each of the 20 agents that are going through. And then this is what it looks like when it's taking the most recent line and constantly displaying it. So this lets you know that it is making progress here. You do see, you usually what ended up happening here before is that it gets very small exploration at the very beginning, and then like you take around in Oak's office. Now I'm hoping here that this stuck offset will help to counteract that. One of the things that I worry here is, we're about 700 steps in, and it hasn't moved too frequently. I mean, we're already at a fair amount of locations visited. But then if you wanted to, I guess, see your agents playing through en masse on this project and their agents at the same time. So let me pull this over here. Again, this is going to be slower because my computer is going to struggle. What do I have it? I have about 180 step delay, but then the agents should start appearing on the map. This is Pallet Town here. They start in this game here in Professor Oak's office. Like I said, it may just be hard for it to visualize. at least showing the others. But with resources being limited, the wrapper that is doing this may also be delayed as well. Really want to stream on. It delays about 180 frame steps from displaying on the map here, and then every learning cycle, so about 1,024 steps is a learning cycle, which means around 1,200 should have started popping back up on the map, and there we go. You can see here, there's for the wrapper here, I put my name on it, and then the dash is the number of agents that are going, or the number of agent that it is in this location. Then I put a space, the starter Pokemon, or not starter Pokemon, the lead Pokemon of your party and its current level. So right now they are exploring Oak's lab. See one that has actually made it out into Ash's house here to make some progression. But this is kind of how everything starts. Is it needs a lot of time to start to figure out, okay, how can I uh, maximize all these rewards that I'm being given over a given period of time. So the idea here with the stuck penalty is you don't want to lose too much points here for not moving, and then move around here. So you can see some of these, like, okay, it has a 1.28, but only a -10 in terms of its stuck, whereas ones that have been sitting around longer, you can see here 38 less explored, but 12, and then some here even 26 locations visited, but a minus of 0.7. So hopefully it learns that moving is the better alternative for making progress through the map. Let's stick to the bottom. There we go. You can see here almost all of them have maximized the menu score rewards, so that's going to get kind of stuck there. A few of them have already gone down in terms of items to 0.1. I don't know if that means that they accidentally tossed the items already, so then hopefully it stops doing that, or it's learned that they are actually useful. The biggest thing here is that it learns to use the Pokeballs to convert them into points for capturing Pokemon. That's the hope. And then scene here is going to be 3. It's going to have this for, yeah, it had to have tossed the items here. Because this is scene 3, because it has seen each of the starter Pokemon in their balls in Professor Oak's lab. And that's what you get at the start of the Pokedex. So they have not really made it out into the grass yet to start getting additional points even for encountering wild Pokemon here. So that is, I guess, in a nutshell, how these work together. You can see here, I'm getting about half the normal performance while my stream is running. I usually get about 400 to 450 FPS there. That's frames per second across all the agents combined. So 20 agents, that means I'm getting about 15 movements a second. No, sorry, about 7 to 8 movements a second across all of them times 20 would give you about 140. Just to give you an idea of where we are. And then um, I am still seeing progression here across the exploration going up. There is still increases in the stuck, but hopefully these two will counteract one another and get it out and explore more. We'll see when it comes back out into the map. Again, there's going to be a delay while I'm doing this streaming. But if you go to this website yourself, you'll see a different version than I am at the moment, just because mine are delayed getting there. So you can see now my agents have reappeared. They're moving around. A couple here are in the corner looking at Professor Oak's lab. Sorry, computer in his lab, not really doing all that much. A few over here by the table. I think there is 1 or 2 NPCs here in the office that they can talk to as well. But the hope is that it gets out and exploring. So what I'll do is I'll be here kind of in the background and let it run for a little bit and then talk about what I'm seeing here. So how I'll do this is we will treat this a little bit. Here to gotten through the 4th iteration now of its preliminary learning. And the hope here is that we see it get out of professor office and into other areas. It's fine if it goes to the other houses for now, because then at least it's learning that moving is better. Right, we had that agent. A couple of them now have a score in the ones, so hopefully they are progressing through the office. They get point, zero point 0.01 for each essential tile visited along the way. What that means is if it moves around Professor Oak's lab, it's going to maximize the reward there. You can see one made it over to the house over here. This is probably one of the ones that has the higher scores in terms of how it moved, but it could just as easily have accidentally moved quickly over there, and then it's not really getting much more as it moves around, and in fact will start accruing that stuck penalty. So we'll see kind of long term how those two start to interact. The idea here with how we rearrange things was that the novelty reward or would help to offset that stuck penalty a little bit. So that way it continues to learn that, hey, standing still is bad and moving, finding new spaces is good, to continue to maximize that. And I'm hoping we see more. So what I'll do is I'll take myself off camera to hopefully free up a little bit of resources for this to proceed along. Yeah, we're still south of about 200 FPS, but I'll be here in the chats. I'll be here on voice as well, so we can add, if you ask any questions, I'll pull them up for everyone and we can read them off for a little bit, and then eventually do that for maybe the next, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes, and then can bring the stream down to let the agents train overnight. And then hopefully we'll have an update that I can provide on Thursday when I go live next, and we can check out the progress. Another idea is that I could just leave this displaying as it is in the background, just kind of take myself off mic and camera. We make over the course of a day at 200 FPS. What would that be? About 2 million steps? Maybe more than that. It's awful. What do we got? We should make about 700,000 steps an hour at that rate. And so over the course of a day, then you make about 10 to 15 million steps. Yeah, about half my normal rate of about 25 to 30 if we leave things on. But what I'll do is I'll put this, like I said, take myself off camera just to try and help free up some of the resources here, and then hopefully improve the output here. Let me load up. And like I said, I'll be here in the chat while this is running for the next little while. I know the bots, the Stream Elements bot here is also providing updates. I guess I should tell it that there are 20 running. And let me put the GitHub link here as well. If anyone coming to all this can get updated as well. All right, hopefully you can still hear me. We are having one agent that has made it outside, but not really progressed much in terms of getting through Ash's house itself. And then the others are still in Professor Oak's lab. Hopefully we can get them to make some progress in terms of getting out and about. The stuck score is slowly climbing, so it's ultimately what we would like. It seems like a few of them have also tossed items, which will um, mean that they won't be able to convert them. So it is at least going through the menus. Like I said, if you're here in the chats, please feel free to ask any questions. All right, so we'll give it a little bit more time here just to try and figure things out before I'll bring the stream down. We're about 10,000 steps in. Uh, it's really kind of eventually get unstuck. You can see it kind of trying to move around. One of the things that we'll have to do is kind of get around this bookcase here and get it out. The other one has kind of stuck to the corner of the house, um, Ash's house. So not really progressing through. You can see that we would want it ideally to start moving away, but not really, I guess, getting that lucky in terms of progression. But it is learning at the very, very beginning. It starts from scratch in this case because we've made so many changes to how things are going that the previous runs really wouldn't be of value to it. And so, hope here is that we can get it to move more quickly into making it around map locations and just general improvements uh, in increasing its uh, increasing the rewards that it's obtaining. Another question for those who are watching this live or later, if you leave a comment, let me know what you think. Now I'm losing my connection. Hopefully this gets better. Um, would you prefer the way here where we make more progression by kind of allowing more of the agents to run here, or do you prefer to actually just kind of watch the stream as it goes with the agents learning? I don't particularly see more any questions here, so hopefully this means that things are going well. I think what this means is that I will bring the stream down to let the agents train more, and then the next stream will be on Thursday, where I will go through and we can talk about the results from the updates here, see if there's anything tweaks that need to be made. If there isn't really anything to update for these, then I will transition to a stream where we will pick up essentially where the last run for the agents had left off, and we can show that as they're happening live. And then we can let that run until Friday stream, which is when I will be transitioning to my new project, where I am trying to learn how to use the Instagram API in terms of finding information about certain keywords and seeing how like the best, I guess the best performing videos under those keywords to see if there's any like certain trends that people are doing, to see if it's like repeatable instead of just randomly guessing and putting things out there. My guess is there would be some things that we can find here. There's going to be authentic, I describe it, authentic content being generated, but then once people see that, they tend to copy those fairly often, and then we can essentially figure out what those are using machine learning AI. So that's the idea of what to do on that series, is to essentially create a model that can learn all the best ways to get the most out of Instagram, Instagram, and then it's TikTok still uses, well, TikTok's just been banned, so maybe we can't use that as well, but at least get an idea of on Instagram and see if we can convert that over to other platforms as well to try and help do essentially idea generation from viral posts. I hope that makes sense. That's where we'll be. So Thursday stream again will be an update on progress as far as Pokemon goes, and then Friday stream will be kicking off the Instagram. I don't want to call it like viral posts. I don't know the right way to describe it. Seeing if we can use machine learning to highlight what those best performing videos on certain keywords are. So that's where we are for today. Thank you everyone thank you for anyone who watched this live. I did see there were a few people here still in the chats and stuff. And then, like I said, we'll be back on Thursday. Thank you and have a good night.